Good morning, everyone, from Acenano. My name's Stephen Lofts. I am the leader within the project of the external training efforts. So it's my job to say welcome to this virtual training session on the Acenano Toolbox. You will hear through the rest of the morning, obviously, more about the Toolbox and have the chance to try it out and ask us questions about how it works and how to use it. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Eva Valsami-Jones, our coordinator, who's going to give you a brief welcome. Eva.
Thank you, Steve, and hello, everybody. It is such a pleasure to get to the point where we actually have some exciting presentation to deliver to you all, because now all our tools are ready and can be tested by yourselves, and hopefully can be found of some use. Let me just briefly share my screen. I literally have 4 slides. I don't want to take much of today's time. The time is really for trying things rather than listening to me. Hopefully you can see my screen, my slides. Yeah, thank you, Steve. So welcome again. Just a couple of very brief statements in relation to Acenano. Some of you know the project, some of you may not. So it is an EU Horizon 2020 funded project that's been running, originally planned for 4 years, but thanks to COVID, 4.5. We are in our last couple of months of life left to the project. We had 28 wonderful partners from all around Europe and from all around the world, indeed, including China and Korea. We had a mixture of academics and industry, and we had the pleasure to work very hard to address the title of the project, which was Analytical and Characterization Excellence. So we really tried to develop, to improve, to invent new techniques to solve nanomaterial characterization problems. These are our key elements for the project. So I already mentioned analytical innovation. So we did come up with some brand new ways to approach problems, for example, hydrophobicity, solubility. We also, where we had good solutions, but we thought they could be made better, we worked to optimize them. Maybe things like NTA, for example, nanoparticle tracking analysis is a good example here. We also worked very hard to ensure that techniques that were either already established or were being established with the project were benchmarked and standardized, and otherwise recorded, confirmed in terms of operating procedures, so that these techniques are available to the community and users have confidence in using them. And exactly, training is part of this process. So training is the next stage, deliver those techniques to you all, hopefully to many others, because all these are also tools available online. And of course, getting data solutions, so either data or protocols, which are for these projects especially equally important, made available, made fair, and then delivered to those who need them most. This is just a little schematic. I wonder whether I have time to say much about it. I'll probably just reveal all the innovations that we produced during the project, and some had to do with mixing techniques, so doing particle sizing as well as analytical composition. Some had to do with a further level of hyphenation, so that a sample that is unknown and needs to be characterized can be characterized simultaneously by several different techniques. Some of the things we developed were also assays, so quick ways to deliver an answer to questions like how soluble is this, how hydrophobic is this, how reactive is this particular material, in a way that you have a semi-quantitative but fast answer. We also worked on miniaturization and simplification. So big instruments that go into research labs, can they be made smaller and go into, for example, SME and industry labs? And finally, we worked very hard to harmonize sample introduction, because we felt that sometimes what gives inconsistent analytical answers is not actually the measurement itself, but it's the way the sample is presented. So that's all I really have to say about Acenano. You will hear, of course, a lot more about what we're doing today and the specific applications in terms of sample characterization, selection procedures, and also data finding, warehousing, taking care by my colleagues. But that's all I had to say. Thank you so much for joining today. Enjoy the workshop. Steve, back to you.
Thank you very much, Eva. I now have a few other slides to share with you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the toolbox, and also about the structure of the day, and how we would like you, for example, to pose any questions that you have to us. So the more science-related bit first. One of the very obvious aspects about nanomaterial analysis is that there are lots of methods which can measure different aspects of nanomaterial properties, such as size, shape, concentration, etc. And there is therefore, for someone who is interested in having a nanomaterial characterized in a particular way for a particular purpose, there are questions such as which of these methods which of these methods are the best for my nanomaterial? How do these methods perform? What is its analytical window? That's a particularly important question, for example, if there are competing methods, if you like, if there is more than one method that may work for your nanomaterial, but there are subtle aspects of how that method performs that makes it slightly more or less suitable than another method. And obviously how to set that method up and use it. And the Acenano toolbox is intended to help you, as people interested in nanomaterial characterization for specific purposes, to answer those questions and to come up with a final selection of a nanomaterial analytical technique. So a little bit about the toolbox. The toolbox contains two main elements. First of all, what I should there have called the decision tool rather than a decision tree. The decision tool, which of course you will see very soon and may well have had a play with already, is a method for taking information from you about the characteristics of your nanomaterial as you are aware of it, and the reason why you want to make a measurement on that nanomaterial, and the reason and what measurement or measurements you want made. And based on what you tell the tool, it provides tailored method recommendations. And then from the tool, you can move into the knowledge infrastructure or the knowledge warehouse. And this is really a repository of information about the analytical methods. So if we look at the right-hand side of the slide, starting from the Acenano methods, we have produced standard operating procedures for those methods. So obviously those are documents which, if you are an analytical person and you wish, for example, to set a method up yourself, that can provide you with guidance on how to do so. In some cases, to provide additional help, we have video protocols which are published in an open access journal and therefore which are freely accessible. And those are effectively, if you like, standard scientific papers, but sitting alongside them is a video demonstration of an analytical protocol. And the other element to the data here are the results of round robins or inter-laboratory comparison tests on the performance of Acenano methods, which provides us with statistical information on how much variability you would expect a method to produce when done across different laboratories, and therefore a measure of the robustness of that method. And all of this is then puts into the knowledge infrastructure, which you can access as a separate tool in itself, or which, I hope you'll see this morning, you can access from the decision tool once that tool has given you your tailored method recommendations. So that's a summary of the toolbox. That's all from me. So at this point, we can move directly into the first training session on the decision tool. So I will hand over to my colleague Ruud Peters, who will start by providing an introductory presentation on the tool.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ruud Peters and I work for Wageningen Food Safety Research in the Netherlands, and we are a partner in the Acenano project. And this morning it's my pleasure to present to you a short presentation about the nano method decision tool, which is part of work package 5 in the Acenano project. And I'll first try to share my screen and we can see it. Well, one of the work package 5 objectives is to provide a method selection tool to guide the user to reliable measurement methods to determine certain key descriptors, for instance, size or solubility. And there are 3 aspects here that are important for this nano method decision tool. First, there's the key descriptors themselves, of course. That is, what parameters should be determined. Which key descriptor needs to be determined will depend on the purpose of the investigation. What do you want to determine? And this may be for the registration of a new material in REACH, or it may be for the risk assessment of a certain nanomaterial, or it may be for the labeling of a new product that will be introduced on the market. For these 3 purposes, 1 or more key descriptors have to be determined, and analytical methods are needed for this determination. Secondly, there are the nanomaterial properties. And what do we know of the material we want to analyze? We need to know something, otherwise we cannot decide which analytical method we want to apply. And in general, multiple analytical methods will be available for each key descriptor, and whether 1 or more of these methods are suitable for the determination will depend on the material properties of the material which has to be analyzed. And these properties are determined based on material property questions that were already formulated in the Nano Definer e-tool, which have to be answered as far as possible for the material that we want to analyze now. And then thirdly, there are of course the analytical methods themselves, the performance, what can the method do, and therefore the performance characteristics of each analytical technique that was selected to determine a key descriptor is evaluated by the Acenano experts against the properties of the material that has to be analyzed. And from the evaluation of each key descriptor, a matrix was prepared where the performance characteristics of the analytical technique are compared to the suitability of the technique for the analysis of a certain material. Now let's first look at the key descriptors. We have 3 groups, like I already mentioned. The key descriptors for registration. For registration of a nanomaterial must be characterized in accordance with Annex 6, Section 2.4 of REACH. And according to this annex, the following key descriptors have to be determined. And these are size distribution, shape and aspect ratio, surface functionalization, any specific surface area. So you have to hand in numbers for these key descriptors. And we've added these to the nano method decision tool to be found out what method is best to determine these. The second was the key descriptors for risk assessment. And then we have to determine which are, of course, the important key descriptors for risk assessment. Well, in a recent study, expert consultation were used to determine which key descriptors are relevant for risk assessment. And the results of the survey, which is being published, are also shown on this slide. And what we did, we only chose those key descriptors that were nominated by 7 or more experts for the development of the nano method decision tool. And you can see them here. The 8 selected key descriptors are solubility, shape, particle reactivity, surface area, particle size, aggregation, surface coating, and surface charge. Then we have one more, that is labeling, and that has to do with the fact that there are still uncertainties in the application of nanomaterials, and therefore appropriate consumer product labeling is necessary to identify ingredients in nanoparticle form and to inform consumers of their presence in final products. Well, the European Commission has published a recommendation on the definition of a nanomaterial, and the EC definition uses size as the only defining property. And so for this, we have the key descriptor size and size distribution, and it can be for cosmetics, it can be for biocides, or it can be for food. So now we've discussed all key descriptors, and what we did is we selected about 20 analytical methods that may be used to determine them. And whether these methods are applicable will also depend on the nature of the material and the limitations of the method itself. And for example, while over 10 methods are mentioned to determine particle size, only electron microscopy will be able to size a material consisting of particles smaller than 10 nanometer. And to make a useful method selection, our knowledge of the material properties has to be matched with the performance criteria of the methods. These material properties were already defined as a set of questions in the Nano Definer e-tool, and these are used here also. So now let's have a brief look at the most important material properties. I've written them down here for you. And the first one is the primary grouping, which we do on the physical state of the material. It is can be a powder, a suspension, or an aerosol. And depending on this, some methods will work and some will not. For instance, DET works only for powdered materials, and so it won't work for suspensions, while DLS, dynamic light scattering, for instance, will work only for suspensions. The second question, which you will find in the nano method decision tool, is then the dispersibility of the material. And because many methods only work with suspensions, it is essential to know whether the material to be analyzed can be dispersed in a liquid. And a third question is the chemical composition of the material. It's one of the most important criteria, of course, because the characterization method has to be chosen accordingly. If, for example, an ICP-MS can only serve as a detection technique if the material is inorganic and contains elements which are suitable for detection with ICP-MS, for instance, silver or titanium dioxide nanoparticles. Another question is about shape. Some methods will not be able to detect certain particle shapes. Single particle ICP-MS, for instance, will express each particle size as an equivalent spherical diameter, while electron microscopy will have difficulty scaling flat objects. But there are more questions, in total 18 questions. There is also one about the particle size. I already gave the example of the electron microscope. And I think transmission electron microscope can probably handle the biggest size range, spanning from 1 to 10,000 nanometer, while for small angle X-ray spectrometry, the size range is limited to 100 nanometer only. And so your knowledge about what particle size this material may have will be important to decide which methods are applicable or not. There are more questions about the presence of smaller and larger particles, and there are questions about aggregates and also about vacuum conditions. If you're using electron microscopy, for instance, the material you want to analyze should be stable against vacuum conditions, otherwise it will not work. All these questions you will find in the Nano method decision tool. So now we also cover the material properties that are being used to describe the nature of the material, and to make a useful method selection. Our knowledge of the material under investigation has to be matched with the performance criteria of the analytical methods. And these performance criteria have been discussed with experts in the Acenano consortium and have been listed in the form of tables for the applicable analytical methods to determine certain key descriptors. And in total, these are about 20 different methods which are being used there. Just as an example, I give you this table for transmission electron microscopy, where you can see on the left the questions that were asked from the experts, and on the right the answers they gave. So for TEM, according to the experts, it can handle all materials, whether it's powder, suspension, or even an aerosol. And it can also handle all kinds of suspensions, since the liquid of the suspension is evaporating anyway before you do the analysis. Apparently, it can also handle all types of chemical compositions, although some, like biological materials, may be sensitive to vacuum or electron radiation, but that is further on in the table. This table goes on for about 3 pages with all the questions, and it was then evaluated in the Acenano consortium. From the evaluation for each key descriptor, a matrix was prepared where the performance characteristics of the analytical technique are matched with the material properties. And the first version of the method decision tool was made in simple Excel. In total, there were 2 worksheets required, one which handled the input, that is the answers to the questions, and a second for the output, the coloring of the available methods in yellow, indicating that a method is possibly applicable, but more information is needed. The method may also turn into a green color, indicating that the method is applicable, or it can go to a red color, indicating that the method is not applicable. Well, in the end, this Excel-based tool was converted into an online application. And this is a picture of the online application. It's essentially the same as the Excel tool, but it's far more user-friendly and easy to use. On the left side here, you see the questions which are asked to you, which you have to answer about the material you are interested in. And on the right-hand side, you see the answers for the different methods which could be applied. And as you can see, we already answered some questions here, and then you will see that some methods turn green, indicating that they are applicable for this material, or red, indicating that they are not applicable for this material. And this completes my presentation of the e-tool. Next, we will have a training session in which you will look at the e-tool itself to see how it functions in practice, or maybe you already did, and we will see you there. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, okay, assuming everyone's back, thanks very much for that, everyone. I hope you found that nice and productive. I can certainly say in the little session that I was in, we got some nice positive feedback and some good ideas. So thank you very much for that. So now we have, before the break, a brief 10-minute wash-up session. And the way I would like this to work is like this. First of all, we have a couple of very straightforward poll questions for you to answer. Then we will deal with any questions that are in the chat. I don't believe there are any at the moment. What we will probably do then, and we will have to keep that till 10 minutes because we are a little way behind, is that we will throw the floor open for any questions or comments on the decision tool before we go into the break. Okay, so with that, I shall hand back to Christine, who is going to do the feedback for us.
Okay, I am launching the first poll now, which asks, how easy did you find the use of the decision tool during the training session? So, easy seems to be the response there for the majority of people who've responded there, and certainly no one found that difficult. Okay. And then we've got a second one. So question 2. How likely is your organisation to find the decision tool useful in the future? So quite a few unsure people. Some definitely yes and some likely yes there for you. Okay, thanks for doing that for us. I'll stop sharing that and I'll pass you back to Steve.
Thanks very much, Christine. Thanks very much, everyone, for providing that feedback. Very pleasing, I think, from our point of view, to see that generally you found the decision tool reasonably easy to use and potentially useful for you. What I would like to do now, and we will just take 5 minutes over it as we are a little bit behind, is simply I would like to throw the floor open to any further questions from you that you may have for us on the decision tool. So please, just speak up. If you'd like to put your camera on, please feel free. If you're feeling a little shy, we're not going to make you put your camera on. But please, any questions or indeed comments on the tool that you'd like to make, we're very interested to hear. Thanks.
Hi, Stephen and others. I did the evaluation a while back of the tool. I joined late today, so I missed what happened before. But when I checked the endpoint description of single particle inductively coupled plasma time of flight mass spectrometry, then it's empty. So who would be responsible to make this unempty? And I believe then since this entry is empty, it cannot show up in any of the decision as endpoint in the decision if there is no description.
Sorry, what method was that again?
1.1 single particle ICP TOF-MS.
Okay, we will definitely, this is actually one of the methods we've worked quite a lot in the project. So I'm surprised I'm surprised we haven't uploaded the info yet, but it will definitely be there, I can promise you.
Okay, so therefore I was not really able to test.
Yeah, it has an option. Yeah, apologies for that. I didn't actually realize it's not up yet. Okay, thank you.
We also have a question from Kai. Good morning, Kai. Got to a sticking point on the question of particle size. If you have a platelet, should you include the lateral dimensions outside of the nano range or just the nano range dimension? So quite a technical question. I don't know, Ruud, if you can tackle this one.
What was, can you repeat the question once more?
Okay, I shall read it out of the chat. I had a plate on question 7 size.
Yes.
I had a platelet and wasn't sure if I should include the lateral dimensions outside of the nano range or just the nano range dimension.
Oh, in that case, I would include the nano range dimensions, because most methods can handle the larger sizes, but the problem often is with the small sizes. And so in that case, if you're unsure, just type in the nano dimensions.
Yeah, just to say that the guidance document, which I'm pretty sure is going to be part of the knowledge infrastructure, or is going to be accessible from there, provides you with a more in-depth explanation of what's needed, and of course any feedback you can provide us on that about clarification where you encounter this sort of problem, we'd be very grateful. So thanks very much. Okay, everyone, it's time for us to get started again. This is just to briefly introduce Barry Hardy from Edelweiss Connect, who is going to provide us with a 10-minute overview of the knowledge infrastructure. So over to you, Barry.
Thank you, Steve. You can see my slides on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a brief overview of what the knowledge infrastructure is, and then we can explain what the breakout structure will be, and then go to the breakout. So first of all, this is the web address. Hopefully you have all being able to complete a login to that so that you can access the information on the portal. If by any reason you haven't done that yet, you might want to note this address and make sure you have completed a login. Once you have the login, then you access the information on the portal on different things like protocols, techniques, data, publications, and so forth. And this is the picture of the overall workflow of the system. The system is supporting both people who are developing methods, improving methods, using methods over here in the lab, and getting their protocols defined in a rigorous way, entered into the system, and then any data that's generated on a technique can be associated with a particular instance of a set of protocols in the knowledge infrastructure. So the knowledge infrastructure is the knowledge we have on techniques, on the component protocols, on reference data like we might run in interlaboratory comparison studies, and then to have that data well defined. So the infrastructure also then includes a database with interfaces, and then from that we can make that data available to applications for analysis and reporting and interaction on the web. The idea is this would be a longer term sustainable infrastructure that would continue to support over the longer term addition of new methods and new data, and be something valuable to the community and who are interested in characterization of nanomaterials, and then the end users as well downstream here could make use of that information when they're trying to make decisions on new problems that they have, and that's the idea to focus on today. We just worked earlier this morning on the decision tool, and as you saw, when you fill out your questions and various methods are selected here, you then have a link to go over to further information on that particular method and to study that further. For example, just choosing the first technique, dynamic light scattering, if you followed the link to DLS, you would have a description of what that technique was about, what it did, and then linked to that would be information on protocols that have been prepared, or reference data sets, who carries out this method, and so forth. The system also supports a variety of mechanisms for people to prepare and share their protocols or updates to them or their data. So if any of you in the group are here or in that kind of work, that's something to consider. And you can see the design of our model here in terms of going from sample preparation to measurement, to data treatment, to process data, and then of course you want to analyze that data. So there's an area on protocols. You'll see that from the main menu if you want to look at information on protocols. The model for protocols was to have 3 component protocols that would make up the complete definition of a technique, so a sample preparation protocol, a measurement protocol, and a data treatment protocol. So there are different kinds of protocols in the system, and your overall result could depend upon a combination, of course, of preparing the sample, what measurement you then carried out on the sample, and then how did you treat the data. Another view, as you also see on the main menu here, is a data view. So data can, the system supports the addition of data to the system, and then once the data is on the portal, it can either be viewed or downloaded or made available through interfaces. The idea was to standardize the description of the protocols and the data. So there's a fair goal, the so-called fair goal, to make such knowledge available in a harmonized and interoperable way, and then from the knowledge infrastructure we can combine the data with other things. There's also a publications area. If you go there, you'll see currently various kinds of reports and articles related to the project. Again, this is something we're working on continuously adding to as the project develops. And I'll just highlight here, there's a couple of new entries around this training, the decision tool guidance. So that'll be available for you to come in and look at any time in the future, perhaps an update to it with a new version. And also for this part of the training, we have a knowledge quiz. So that's also entered there as an entry, and there's the link to that. Just want to explain what that is. So the idea now in the breakout would be to go ahead and explore the information we have currently on there, on techniques, on protocols, and we've given you to make it a bit more stimulating and interesting, a knowledge quiz, which is at this Google form link here, which we can paste in the chat. And there are 10 questions. Most of them are multiple choice. A couple of ones where you have to enter a short answer, and you should be able to complete it, I believe, in the time we have in the breakout, say approximately 20 minutes. The idea, if you know the answer, each question has a link, as I show here on the screen. Question 1, what is the size determined by NTA based on? There's a reference link. If you go to that link, you should hopefully from there or from something that's linked there be able to find the answer. If you know the answer, see if it verifies it. If you don't know the answer, see if you can, or you're not sure about it, see if you can get your answer clear, and then just select. So during the breakout, we can work through in the groups. You can work with your own form and try to see if you can work through the questions and complete them by the end of the breakout. That's basically it. Any questions before we go to breakout?
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that was a useful session. What we're going to do now, if you'll just give me a moment, is in the final 10 minutes, just to ask you for some more general feedback and ideas. And then at the end of that 10 minutes, the official meeting will end, but those of us helpers who can stay on will. And we'll keep the meeting open for another hour for you to respond to the final feedback question in the chat if you want to, or to if you wish to raise any other questions or issues that you've got with those of us who can stay. But before we do that, I'm sorry, I'm getting slightly confused. We do have our 2 Google poll questions on the knowledge warehouse itself. So Christine, who's smiling
Okay.
because of the mistake I just made,
That's
if you'd like to go ahead with those, and then we shall move on to the final feedback.
okay, that's fine. So, how easy did you find the use of the knowledge warehouse? All right, just share that. So yeah, not quite as easy as the decision tool then, maybe I would suggest. Okay,
You've got
and
quite a
then,
range of
Yeah.
experience there.
And
Very
that's,
easy
yeah.
to difficult, yeah.
That's what
Interesting to
it's with.
discuss later, maybe.
Okay. And then the final question, is the knowledge warehouse something you or your organization would find useful in the future? I'll share those results. So most seems to think quite likely that it would be used. I'll stop sharing that. Thank you very much for doing that, and pass you back to Steve.
Yes, thanks. Just to repeat my Christine's thanks for taking part in that polling. Yes, interesting spread of thoughts there, which of course we're very happy to take up. What I'm going to do now is to share our final feedback question with you. And we're asking you here to please respond in the chat. All your responses will be saved, so we will get an idea. We will be able to store your answers. So without further ado, let me share that slideshow with you. So what we're asking you is, if you can, please tell us one thing about each of the tools that you feel would improve their usefulness to you, your organization, or you and your organization. Please, if you feel there's more than one thing about one of the tools that you would like to tell us about, don't feel constrained by that. And please, if you can, do provide us with any other specific comments or feedback on the usefulness of the tools or on any other aspect of the training. Okay, it's just past 11:30 in the UK. We had planned to finish at in about 3 minutes time. As I've said on several occasions, we are going to keep the meeting open for an hour for those people who can stay beyond 3 minutes time. But please do have a go at responding to this final question. And I think what we should do now is simply open the floor to any verbal questions that you'd like to ask us while we are still here.
Steve, there's a comment from Martin in the chat. I don't know whether you can see that.
It looks like a discussion point on that method.
Quite, and it might be that the subtlety of the language is the issue here, because of course people do report size results from single particle ICP-MS, and we those of us who use the technique know that the limitations of what size means by single particle ICP-MS. So maybe the issue for that question, if I may say so, Barry, is that perhaps it was kept quite simple rather than
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that you could answer, I think.
And there are some assumptions in the analysis that you then derive a size from.
So just for my benefit, and maybe that's not the right time to ask this question, but I'll be quick. Was this information available? I'm not sure what's missing in terms of single particle ICP-MS from our website, from our knowledge warehouse. Was it the full description? Because there must be something there if you were able to develop questions around it, Barry.
Yeah, well, hopefully you would find the answer there somewhere. And if not, that, you know, that's also interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for coming. I hope it was as useful as it could have been for you to see the toolbox and to have an opportunity to use it with us here to answer any questions that you might have. And while we're all here, I would like to thank all the Acenano people who have helped organize this, have come here today and given their time to help run this meeting. And I suppose a special thanks to Christine for doing the organizing and helping this event to run smoothly. So I will take this opportunity again, yes, to say thank you. And if you do have to leave now, goodbye. And if you do wish to provide any feedback to us, for example, by email, we would be very interested to hear it.
Wonderful, Stephen. A huge thank you from me to you and Christine, and of course to Barry and Ruud and everybody else.